Hi, my name is Anne Cooper and I'm a coffee roasting consultant with more than 24 years experience in the coffee industry. I'm here today to conduct a Q&A session with all of the wonderful roasters in Perth at Carbon Coffee. I'm really excited about the opportunity to pass on my experience and skills with other roasters here in Perth. I hope you enjoy today's Q&A. The next possible thought or conundrum at the cupping table is, how do I know that an espresso is going to taste good at the cupping table? And how do I know, obviously filter is a little bit more evident because you do want character and more clarity with your filter and more highlights in your acidity with your filter at the cupping table. Whereas with espresso, you will generally potentially assess that as being quite flat, because a really good espresso at the cupping table is going to be super sweet, super round, awesome body, not necessarily big acidity, because that is then going to cross over to espresso and going to be absolutely amazing. If you're assessing an espresso at the cupping table, if it has too much character, too much intensity, that is going to turn to be quite tart and sour as an espresso. That's what I generally think about when I'm moving around a table with espressos and filters if they are together on the table. Does anybody else have any techniques that they look for when they're cupping espresso? Or does everyone just does anybody QC espresso as espresso?
Yeah, quite often,
yeah.
We quite
Yep,
often
absolutely.
go back through
Yep. And that's definitely something I've started
TDS, we do TDS.
Yep. And definitely, I've actually been working with a few roasters that are very comfortable with espresso QCing the next day. So they've actually really taught themselves to taste through the freshness and the volatility and really get a good understanding of the balance and what they're looking for in their shots. So, sorry?
Any advice in that process?
Yeah, I guess just lots of practice with that, because you do need to taste past the fizzy freshness, because you do get a pretty decent amount of kind of tackiness potentially at the mid to back palate, and you could mistake that for being astringency or dryness. But if you've got a really beautiful viscous mouthfeel, you've got an enormous amount of sweetness that's really finishing at the front of the palate, then you know you're well on track with that espresso. When it's super fresh, yep, definitely. So, yeah, I mean, and that's the really funny thing with coffee. There's no right or wrong. Sometimes you're kind of like, what? Espresso tasting the next day? You serious? You can cup the same day. Like I said before, I'm sure we've all been in situations where we've had to cup something pretty quickly to get an idea if it's okay. Yeah, for sure.
And when I've been doing that with espresso, the next day I've been grinding and then resting for a few minutes.
Yeah, for sure. Anything that helps settle that volatility down, for sure. Absolutely. Yep. Cool. Any other? Yes.
Back to roasting.
Yep.
Once you've got all your samples from your broker or wherever you're buying beans from,
Yep.
you've roasted yours, you've tasted theirs roasted.
Yep.
Got back from Ethiopia and contracting 30 tons, whatever you do.
Yes.
The step from sample roasting and cupping to throwing 70 kilos in the roaster
Yes.
is huge.
It is massive. We were just talking about this earlier with, yes.
I know you obviously altitude and being density, screen size, you take it all into account.
Mm-hmm.
I take a stab.
Yep. So some key things that I try and do is, this is the whole combination of what do I know about my roasting system and what is my general flow. So what kind of batch, you're doing like 55, 60 kilos? Yeah. So obviously pick a batch size that you're very comfortable with. You know the general flow of that batch size and how it moves. So then as the different coffee cooks and reacts differently and starts giving you different feedback, and that's in terms of your rise rate and then how it achieves certain checkpoints along the way, that starts telling me how this coffee is reacting and roasting in the roaster. Little things that I'll also use is when I take my moisture and density reading, I use the moisture as my guide for charging, like what starting temperature to start with. And then depending on the density, if it's really, really hard, then I know I need to keep the heat on that bean and to help push it through first crack, because it's going to self-crash. It's just going to try and just kill itself because it's still so dense for the heat to push through. So if you try and pull the heat out like you might normally do, then it's just you're gonna pay the price for it. But if you've got a really soft bean, then you know, like density-wise, you know you need to prepare that, and back off accordingly through first crack.
I guess essentially that's what we do. Trying to work out if there's any tricks to.
Yeah, it's just really about knowing your roaster, knowing the way that it moves, knowing what you're really comfortable with, and then I guess just knowing how to read the feedback from that particular coffee. Because the way, for example, that particular Ethiopian, it's going to roast vastly different to a Brazil, and then.
Before it.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's almost season change.
Yep.
Everything's going to be different.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So hopefully that kind of helped confirm you are on the right thinking.
That everybody has the same struggle.
Yeah, for sure. Does anybody else have any tips on how to dial in a new coffee? What else do you guys think about?
Other beans I've used that
Yep.
might have very similar.
Yeah, so you might have a cracking profile of another coffee that's got similar properties. So you can feel a bit more comfortable having that profile in the background, knowing how that generally moves, and then kind of go from there. So that's a great way to do that. Yep, cool. Yeah, pretty much. Just throw the dice and off you go. Yeah, but I just can't stress enough, you guys all just really connecting with and knowing your own roasting system. Because once you know how your roasters move, then you'll know what bits of information will apply to your system and which bits might not necessarily work. So definitely things like knowing everything about your green beans before you start, knowing everything about your system, and then also knowing what do you want to get out of the coffee. How do you want to develop and express this coffee? That's really going to also influence the way you move through that roast as well. Who's got the G90? You, yes. I'll never forget when I got onto a 120 and it was just the most beautiful feeling. It was like landing a big massive jet, and it was just gorgeous because showing this roaster how to take it, I'm getting goosebumpy, showing a roaster how to take this 100 kilo massive coffee through a really beautiful nuanced profile, as opposed to just like chuck it in, launch it, and just like get it to first crackers as well as you could, because then it was getting out of control and it was just really not great flavors coming out of that roaster. And as soon as I had the opportunity, and I have to admit, it took I think I stood next to that roaster for 1 month. So once a week, I would go in and I would track their profiles, what they were doing religiously. So I really got a feel for how that roast, because I had to use 100 kilos of green. They were a little bit scared about going like lower on the batches. So I had to really prepare the way I would move this coffee in this more nuanced profile. So it took me about a month of tracking and watching and understanding and planning. And it was just the coolest feeling to actually get it to roast and get it to move in a really beautiful way. So I would say 100% yes with my hand on my heart. You can make 100 kilos of coffee roast the same as a 12 kilo batch of coffee. Yep.
What about something like 3 times that, like 360 kilo or 520 kilo?
That's it.
I was just wondering.
Yeah, no, that's a great question because
just from my thought process is the amount of heat needed to
it's
that massive coffee would have to be a lot. So
Exactly.
The chance of scorching
So
and things like that.
probably,
I would have thought would have been a lot higher.
For a lot of roasters like that size, they are like the Probat version, the Jarvis Burns, is very much based on your system, on the IMF and the Vittoria. So it's a perforated drum. It recirculates and uses its own energy. And it is very much a balancing act on getting a truckload of energy into that mass and then balancing that mass and sailing it out accordingly. But you have to have the right system for that size of coffee. The 120 solid drum, still on the 90. I'm pretty sure it was the same on the 120. Oh, it was massive, and that was my biggest concern straight away, was managing the mass. the first thing I said was, what am I going to do at first crack? This thing's just going to be like rolling. It's going to be going hard. So I really had to practice and plan what to do with that mass at first crack onwards. Yep. Sorry. Yep.
I was just going to say, because I've done 120 and a 360 before.
Yep.
So I found, visually and when you're checking the Actron, the two looked exactly the same if you're following same sort of profiles, but they had a different taste, and if you actually ground them up, the actual colour difference was quite different, and the
Yep.
360 tends to cook it like right through
Yep.
all the way, whereas the 120 actually was quite nice and was a lot more gentle on the
Were they
thing,
the
so-
same roasting systems?
Yeah, exactly
Yep.
the same, both Grambatis,
Yep.
both set up so that they had the same profile,
Yep.
all that sort of thing.
Yeah, interesting.
But yeah,
Okay. Cool.
Just on the different sort of volumes of coffee and masses
Yes.
of coffee.
Yes.
Is there any sort of way that you go about sort of, I guess when you're working with a 5 kilo coffee, because
Mhm.
you're working with so many different sizes, go from 5 kilo to say a 50 kilo or 100 kilo.
Yep.
When that coffee goes into the exothermic reaction,
Yes.
obviously there's going to be so much more energy being produced from a 100 kilo than
Yes.
a 5 kilo.
Yes.
So do you have ways of going, okay, well maybe that's going to...
Yep. So the question's about different batch sizes and managing like a small, medium, large batch size and the energy, particularly at first crack or just in general, just framing it up. Yep. So for example, if you... Yeah, so generally a nice rule of thumb that I like to use is, let's say for example, we're on a 15 kilo roaster, your sweet spot batch size might be 10 kilos, 11 kilos. Is anyone doing 12 in their 15? 12? Yep, let's say 12. Let's say 12 kilos is the sweet spot. And your starting temperature would possibly be around, what would you be starting at, like 220, 230, 235? Yep, yeah, exactly. Let's say, for example, I don't know, 230 is your sweet spot starting temperature for that 12 kilo batch size. In relation to that particular roaster, for every kilo, I would then adjust by 10 degrees. So then, so then for 11 kilos, I would start at 220. For 10 kilos, I would start at 210 and so on. So, and I've actually found that works really nicely. So once you work out the sweet spot for your maximum profile in your drum, then you can then adjust by 10 degrees every kilo. So that's what I find works really well for me. Yes?
That's an easy...
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, yes.
Just,
We'll go, yep,
okay, on that,
yep,
with the 70, we roast 60 kilos.
yep,
And I have roasted down to 20 kilos.
yep.
And my drop, I tend not to change my dropping temperature.
Sorry, I'm just like leaning over here like
I don't change my dropping temperature a lot. I'm looking for a turnaround of a minute 30.
Yes, yep.
It's more my charge temperature that my gas setting
For you, yes,
that I
yes.
vary.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yep. So you find on your system it works better.
Yeah, so I might drop in at 230 for 60 kilos.
Yep.
And 222 for 30 kilos. So it
Wow.
will vary,
So it's not. Yep.
but whereas, for example, I have my gas at number 6 on the big batch,
Yep.
I bring that down to number 3, and that gives me the same curve.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So again, depending on your roaster, your system, and your technique. But yeah, and that's great. But yeah, for me, I've generally found you can try that every. What did I say? 10 degrees for every kilo. Yep.
And more specifically, after or going into first crack,
Yep.
when, you've got so much more mass of
Yes.
that's now producing energy.
Yep. So then the question was then managing the reaction at first crack, so the amount of energy that's being released from the different batch sizes. So one thing I find that tricks a lot of roasters is when you're doing a small batch, a lot of roasters think that you need to rip the heat out of the away. Yeah, exactly. I love that because you're in a world of pain pretty quick. So, correct. And this is where the radiant energy in the beans, there's not enough of the beans rolling around in the drum to be able to create enough energy to be able to push themselves through first crack. So you actually still need to tickle the bottom of the drum or whatever your roasting system is with heat to still keep that small amount of coffee that's flapping around in the drum to still keep that cracking and moving. So unnervingly, you still need to keep a bit of heat pushing through those smaller batch sizes. But obviously when you've got a much bigger batch size with a truckload of energy, depending on what you know about that in terms of its density. So if it's a really dense bean, I would still keep a bit of heat on that coffee. What's something somebody's seen happen to their rise rate curve at first crack on a dense bean? It crashes. So whenever you see a bean trying to crash itself at first crack, that's the first sign that you just need to close your eyes, hold on tight, and just stay on that heat. Just don't let go. Trust me, it works. Don't cry. If you see a bean trying to crash itself, so I'm not sure if you've seen that before, but if it's trying to crash, it's telling you that it still needs heat to push it through. Yes, yeah, exactly. Hasgarantis are super responsive. They are so responsive. I don't think who's, yeah, they're very responsive. Yep, definitely. But then of course, definitely with like a full batch in your drum at first crack, you've got a lot of momentum to manage. So you want to make sure that you can balance your gas adjustment accordingly. So does that kind of help? Yes? Okay. Phew. Yeah, but generally when I step up to a roasting system that I'm a little bit unfamiliar with, I'll just generally ask the key questions of what's your sweet spot batch size, what temperature are you starting at that you're really comfortable with that's giving you an ideal turn and kind of start. And then I'll just use that, go 10 degrees for every kilo to try and then start working out. And generally I've had pretty good success with that technique. I'm able to then think my way through the roast. Once the coffee turns, I can then think about getting to my first colour change and then that nice sweet bread note, and then I can start thinking my way through and planning through the roast. And then as events happen, I then look at the temperature and go, oh, on this roaster, yellow's happening at this temperature. But I've managed to keep it within that window, that nice 5 to 6 minute range, and then I know I'm ready to start preparing it leading into bread and first crack. So the coffee can kind of teach you what to do, but definitely starting the right way is absolutely important. It's 100%, yeah, so important. Yeah.
How varied is your charge temperature on origin and that sort of thing?
That's a great question.
I
would probably possibly maybe equate that to screen size. Because sometimes when you've got your Pacamaras versus just a really good solid Bourbon and stuff like that, you definitely want to consider how that different screen size and even your Peaberries, how they're going to roll in the drum and start taking on the heat. But it's definitely a part of the equation.
Density-wise?
For me, that's more relevant to first crack. I use moisture content as my guide. So high moisture content, I definitely need to want to start hitting it with a lot more heat because water is a catalyst in roasting. So the goal is to get the heat into that water, start creating enough energy to then start creating enough pressure in order for that bean to start opening up and cracking. So if you don't get the right amount of heat and energy into that water and moisture, then you can't get the bean to crack. So that's why I kind of use that as a guide initially. But did that kind of help? Kind of, not really. It's a part of the equation.
But what we find as well, so the question was more in relation to a Solowesi that we have at the moment.
Okay, yep.
But I know a part of the question that I've got in my mind is that a lot of our other coffee is being wash processed as well that we find we're running through our drying phase. So we're hitting yellows sort of within that 3.5, which is very fast.
That's really fast.
So I'm wondering if we're changing too hot. There's no scorching evident. But
Okay.
whether we're just sort of driving the moisture out so fast.
Yeah, definitely. Because then generally if you're moving through to colour change too quickly, you can encourage some unnecessary dryness as well, and also a form of underdeveloped, which is really confusing. Because when you're tasting it, you might be kind of going, oh, I thought that was meant to come from the end of the roast, not from the beginning of the roast. You can actually start underdeveloping from the beginning if you rush it too much. Yep, for sure. Does that help? But definitely with the Sulawesi, is it a wet hold? Yeah, so it must have a truckload of moisture in it. So I can understand the wanting to start with a higher, hotter temperature to start getting it to move. Maybe it's just the way you're introducing maximum burner. Is it turning okay?
Seems to be turning a little later than some of our other coffees.
Yeah.
Generally turns at around a minute 50 to 2.
Okay, yep.
Which is a little bit
Which is
slower,
relevant.
but I thought that was sort of expected.
Relevant to your system, yeah, exactly. But then is it seriously like a minute and a half later, it's already like colour change?
The gilling glass not so much.
Yep.
The colour changing, that's definitely a lot more gradual. We find it colour changing at around 4:15 to 4:30.
Okay.
But it's our other coffees that seem to run away.
Yeah, you might be hitting them just a little bit too hard than what is like necessary. Yeah, yep.
So in terms of processing methods,
Yep.
do you adjust your load temps at all depending on processing?
Like natural versus washed. Like you do know that you can hit a washed coffee nice and hard. They're easy to deal with. You do tend to want to take care of your naturals and your honeys a little bit more, just because you've got that extra sugar to sort of like look after on the outside of that bean. But you don't want to go so gentle that you start stalling and you go too slow into first crack. Yeah, exactly. And then you can't get anything out of it then. Yep. Yep. Sorry, I think did I see another hand somewhere? No? Yes.
Your thoughts on loorings compared to like robats and traditional drums?
Okay. I think loorings are fabulous for filter and drip, but not for espresso. Only because they're 100% pure convection air roasting. There is no heat retention whatsoever in a loring. It only has paddles agitating the green, and the air is being blown through the beans. And the air is the heat source in the loring as well. So outrageously efficient in getting the heat into the bean, to the point where you can almost you can actually start to cook the inside more than the outside if you focus too much on the outside colour. I've had a few scary moments where I thought I'd actually inverted the bean because I was focusing on the colour and forgot what I was on. Because you definitely can't make a loring drive like a drum roaster. Like the turn on a loring is 40 seconds. That's it. It's off and it's up and running. And you just, once you get comfortable with that, everything happens at least a minute to 2 minutes quicker on a loring as well. Just the clarity and the crispness, 100% yes, it's outrageously amazing, it's stunning. But it just doesn't quite give you the depth of sugar caramelisation that you want for an espresso.
Just from my experience with actually serving and working with coffees roasted on a loring,
Yep.
Comparing to a Scottish drum.
Yep.
Yeah, that sort of same experience of like just super clean.
Oh, super clean.
Delicious sort of like espresso and filtered. Yeah, like very, very delicate. And
Yep.
Yeah, it's just completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas your drum roasters are great. I mean, obviously amazing for espresso, great depth of flavour, which is why then, like, you know, your Vittorias, your IMFs and your Brambadis have got that combination of convection hot air with a little bit of retention in the drum to help, you know, with that little bit more, you know, caramelisation and depth of flavour. Yep.
I found interesting that at first I was running my drum speed rotation, you know, quite fast. And
Yep.
I slowed down a little bit, and just by having that little bit more time for the beans down the drum, I just needed to get more body and
Correct.
caramelisation.
Yep.
Obviously better
So-
than espresso, otherwise it was quite hard to get the body.
Yep. So the point was on drum speed in terms of on a system like IMF, Vittoria and Brambati, where it is convection hot air roasting with a bit of conduction. So if your drum speed isn't at the right rate, then it won't allow that correct amount of contact time to encourage that nice body. Has anybody played around with their variable speed on their drums at all? You have? How did you find that? No? For that system it doesn't work, no. Definitely not.
No.
Anybody else played around with drum speed? No? So, yes?
Initially when setting up a new roaster,
Yep.
and that was another bit of guesswork.
So drum speed is really handy. To me, it's like airflow. They're both like get out of jail cards kind of thing. So if you can drive your roaster as much as possible with the burners or the heat source, and then start adding in manipulating whether it's your fan speed or your drum, especially if you're in a little bit of trouble. Increasing the drum speed can really help you get out of trouble. Let's say you've got a really hard Central American, you've started too low and you realise it's not moving as quickly as you would like it to. You can increase the drum speed and it will increase the heat transfer into that bean very efficiently. So you can use drum speed to really help get more better heat into your beans. Yep. Same with airflow. If you've got your burner's on maximum and your fan speed pretty much running high as well, that's a really efficient way to get heat into your bean as well. Everything is going to move super, super fast when everything's at maximum with your fan speed and your burners.
I just want to give everyone get a round of applause to Anne. Thank you so much for sharing this with us tonight. It's really appreciated for you to take your time out to share with the industry. It's incredibly appreciated. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for you guys for giving up your Sunday afternoon to come and be here and just get together and hopefully it's a really nice way for you guys to start getting together more and networking and supporting each other.
It'd be lovely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something little from us to just say thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And
Fantastic.
yeah,
Pleasure.
hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks.